Welcome to Lunch with Legacy Leaders, a weekly talk show with local and national thought leaders on issues impacting the Black community. Now introducing our host, Miss Ann Marie Sorrell.
Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch with Legacy Leaders. I am your host, Ann Marie Sorrell, President and CEO of the Mosaic Group. Thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to join us. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, Broward Health and the Florida Lottery. Today, we will have two very special guests in our studio. Our first guest that we will start with is Mr. John Murillo, who's the author of Contemporary American Poetry. Let's welcome John. Hi, John. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Welcome all the way from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn represent. Thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. So for our audience who does not know you, I'm just going to briefly go over your bio.
Okay.
So John Murillo, who's the author of Contemporary American Poetry. This is the second book of poetry, and it's a reflective look at the legacy of institutional accepted violence against Blacks and Latinos and the personal and societal wreckage wrote by long histories of subjugation. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but a little bit about you, because you're very impressive accolades. I'd be remiss if I didn't share that. So you're an American poet. You're a Cave Canem Fellow and McDowell Fellow, an artist colony in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Founded in 1996 by poets Toy Derricott and Cornelius Eady to remedy the underrepresentation and isolation of African American poets in MFA programs and writing workshops across the U.S. It's based in Brooklyn. John is the author of the poetry collections Up Jump the Boogie, which was in 2010, right? Finalist for both the Kate Tufts Discovery Award and the Pen Open Book Award, and Contemporary American Poetry, which you'll be discussing and reading at the Miami Book Fair online. That's really exciting. So we'll talk about that. Your honors include a Pushcart Prize, the J. Howard and Barbara M.J. Wood Prize from the Poetry Foundation, and fellowships from the National Endowment of Arts, and so many others, including Best American Poetry in 2017, 19, and 2020. You're an assistant professor of English and Wesleyan University, and also teaches in the low residency MFA program at Sierra Nevada College. Woo, a lot going on. Well, welcome again, John. So I want to kind of get started with, you have so many amazing accomplishments as a writer and a poet. What inspired you to become a writer, and specifically in the genre of poetry?
Yeah, good question. Again, thank you for having me on, Ann Marie. I started out actually as an MC, as a rapper, when I was about 11 years old. I'm 49 now, so this is a long time ago. And as I got older, I found that rap, at least at the time, wasn't giving me enough space to be my whole self, right? Now you have writers who are really doing things and expressing different parts of themselves. But at the time, right, to be an MC was to be hard. It was to be, the poetry gave me more room to write about everything, love, loss, family. So I just took to it.
Wow. No, that's a good point. And that's a good comparison, because rap is a form of poetry. But like you said, it allowed you to really expand upon that. So that's pretty cool. So your latest work, Contemporary American Poetry, share with us, what motivated you to write this book, and how it seems so timely right now.
Yeah. So when I write the book, I write poem by poem. So I can't really say anything motivated me to write the book necessarily, but each poem has its own motivation, its own catalyst, right? So some poems are about loss and family, right? Some poems are about institutional racism. Some poems, come out of relationships, things like that. Gathered together, the book kind of tells a story of a youngish man becoming an older man and learning through what it means to live in America. In that sense, the book is going to be timely because the conditions surrounding that life never change, right? So there's a center poem that's about police brutality, police killings of unarmed Black men. And the poem came out in 2020, but it could have come out in 1920 and it would still be relevant. You know what I mean? And if things don't change, it could come out in 2120 and still be relevant. So that's, I think it's more of a commentary on our shared experience as Black people here in America than it is about me, being tuned in to the times, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, it makes a lot of sense in the sense that we're still grappling with some of the same issues from 1920, 2020, and like you said, it could be 2120 if things in our society does not change and evolve. So I think it makes total sense what you're saying.
Absolutely. Thank
you. You're welcome. So for those who have not picked up a copy, can you maybe read an excerpt of two so we can get a flavor for your poetry?
I can. I'm going to pick, I write long poems. They tend to go 4, 6, 8 minutes long, so I'm not going to read one of those. I'm going to read one of the shorter ones. This poem is called Mercy, Mercy Me, which, hopefully, your viewers know it's a title of a Marvin Gaye song. The next line is things ain't what they used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this poem after returning. I'm from LA originally. I live in Brooklyn now, but I'm from LA. And around the 25th anniversary of the Rodney King rebellions or riots, I went back home because my grandmother passed. And while I was there, I went to my old neighborhood, and the building I grew up in, or one of the buildings I grew up in, rather, had burnt down, they said, during the riots. So this poem is me just kind of thinking about home and a few things. Mercy, mercy me. Crips, Bloods, and butterflies. A sunflower somehow planted in the alley, its broken neck. Maybe memory is all the home you get, and rage, where you first learn how fragile the axis upon which everything tells. But to say you've come to terms with a city that's never loved you might be overstating things a bit. All you know is there was once a walk-up where now sits a lot, vacant, and rats in deep grass hide themselves from the day. That one apartment fire set back in 76, one the streets called arson to collect a claim, could not do, ultimately, what the city itself did, left to its own dank devices some 16 years later. Rebellions, said some. Riots, said the rest. In any case, flames. And the home you knew, ash. It's not an actual memory, but you remember it still. A rust-bottomed Datsun handed down then stolen, stripped, recovered, and built back from bolts, driving away in May 1992. What's left of that life quivers in the rear view, the world on fire, and half your head with it.
Wow. I had to be in snapping it up, right? No, that was awesome. I'm always inspired and in awe by poets because your words just have such depth and such, meaning it comes from a place, and I don't know what place that is in each respective poet, but the way you're able to put those words together and really then convey profound messages. Can you give us like a synopsis or a peek into how you are able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes from vision, right? So you hear things like poets talking about inspiration. The words come when they do, right? But that first draft isn't really what ends up being what's read by everybody else. So you know how sometimes in a conversation you look back on it and you wish you had said this and wish you had said that, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with this, but you do get a chance to go back and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite until what you want to say is what's said, right? So sometimes an image or an idea will come to me. It might take years for me to be able to work it out into something that I feel comfortable with someone else reading. And then I have some readers, friends who read my work, I read theirs. And, they help me, decide, whether or not, or to realize whether or not what I meant to say is what's received. Like for instance, that first line, Crips, Bloods, and Butterflies, there's a whole history behind that may not be conveyed. So if I really want y'all to get that, then I need to work harder at trying to develop and bring that meaning out, right? So it's a long process. I have poems in this book that took up to 7 years to write. I have poems that came out like that. A few of those are the gifts, but for the most part, it's a whole long process.
Wow. See, I'm glad you put that on there, because I think as writers and aspiring writers always have a challenge with the timeline. Like, oh my God, I got to rush through this and I have to publish this, or I have to put it out, in spoken word, or whatever means they choose to put their art out. But I love the fact that you said that you have, there are pieces that have taken you 7 years. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And is it because of the reflection on it, or?
No, it's because, you set a certain standard for yourself, right? You want whatever you put out there. And I'm not alone in this. Most poets are like that. If you notice, most books of poetry are really thin. Mm-hmm. Between this first book and this book is 10 years. So that little book right there took 10 years. So what's happening is you're going back, you're revising, you're really trying to make sure that what you put out there is what you mean. So I liken it to the way Sade puts out albums, right? Sade will come out every 8 years, every 10 years, whatever, but her album's always going to be banging. As opposed to somebody who's not very interested in making good music, but is more interested in being relevant. They're on every mixtape, you know what I'm saying? They got an album every year. But I'm more interested not in being, current or whatever, but in actually, when I do put something out there, you getting my best effort.
I love that. Spirit of excellence. Now, what advice can you offer other authors and aspiring authors as they work to become successful in a literary space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I follow up what I just said. You gotta, one, think of what it means to be successful, right? So for some people, publishing is success, but really to publish just means to make public, right? You could be published and not be good, right? So I would say spend more time working on your craft and trying to be the best writer you can be. And this is not just for poets, but for any artists, right? We don't, our thing is we want to get out there. But if you were a doctor, you wouldn't say, I got to start operating soon. Nah, you know what I'm saying? There's a process. You would say, I'm going to med school, I'm going to do my internship, whatever. And at some point I'll operate on somebody. But I feel like a lot of artists, they want to, be prodigies and want to jump out the gate and start operating. Nah, learn your craft first. So I would say to, aspiring writers, read widely, read deeply, practice. Because once something's published, especially now with the internet, once it's out there, it's out there. Yeah. Right. So, don't rush.
Yeah, no, that's good. I needed that personally, so thank you.
We all do, and the thing is, like, I'm saying it now, but tomorrow I might, get a little antsy and start wishing, I need more. I need more accolades. I need more things published. But you know, it's not really about the work getting out there so much as once it's out there, what work is it doing?
Yeah. Yeah, that statement, once it's out there, what work is it doing? I
Yeah.
love that. Is it making an impact? Is it changing a life? Is it inspiring someone, motivating someone? Yeah, I love that. So you're going to be at the Miami Book Festival. So when can our audience tune in with you at the Miami Book Festival?
I'm not really sure. You got to check the schedule. I
Okay.
have to check the schedule too because, but not just me. There's a lot of really really great authors. It's one of the premier literary events in the nation. Y'all are really really lucky to have it down there. I'm lucky to be a part of it this year, and lucky to be a part of this. So thank you.
No, thank you. So, how does our audience reach you and learn? Well, first of all, purchase your book. Second, how do they reach you and learn about what you have coming up, where you're going to be, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I have a website, www.johnmurillo.com. And I think it's coming across the bottom of the screen right now. There it is, www.johnmurillo.com. And people can contact me there, even just, to say, hey, I saw you on Legacy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we definitely thank you for being a part of our Leaders or Readers series, which is, this is a campaign that we're doing for the month of November, and you're kicking it off with us. So we thank you so much, John, for being here with us. I truly enjoyed learning about you, learning about your process, hearing your excerpt that you read with us. And so I'll be checking you out as well as checking the schedule for the Miami Book Fair and tuning in to your online event.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we're going to bring on our next guest, who is no stranger to those who are here in South Florida, Mr. Chris Norwood, who is a political strategist and a columnist for Legacy Magazine. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Good. Welcome. So, for those who don't know you, you also have a brief bio that I'm just going to read through a little bit. You're the principal of Norwood Consulting. You have 25 years of work experience in human service agencies as both a consultant, board member, employee, and volunteer. You're a graduate of Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, where you studied social work and community organization. And you pursued your Master's of Public Administration at Cornell University's Institute of Public Affairs, and your JD from St. Thomas University. So, Dr. Chris.
Rarely do people call me doctor, but it's accurate.
It is accurate. Okay. You're a community organizer, passionately involved in both passionately involved but strategically focused, working in networks across the spectrum of human services. Now, you've been a chair and a board member of many organizations in the community. You're also the founder of the Florida Association of Independent Public Schools and the Governance Institute for Public Accountability. So you've been in public service for a while, but the political side, let's dive into that. How long have you been a political strategist, and what made you get into politics?
Wow, that's a great question. So when I was in college at Hampton University, I had the opportunity of working one summer with the city of Hampton, Virginia, the actual local government, and I worked for the Hampton Youth Services Commission. And in that capacity, I ran a job referral service for teenagers called Rent a Teen. And it was basically a summer jobs program. But through that effort, I began to see the role that government can play in youth development. And then later on, the following year, while I was still in college, I worked for the South Florida Council of the Boy Scouts of America. And I would go into the inner city of Newport News, Virginia, and help to assist troops and packs to start in the Black community. And again, the local government, the city of Newport News, played a viable role in assisting and helping me organize to find volunteers, to find places for kids to gather, to hold their troops and packs meetings. And that was sort of how I got engaged in understanding the role that government can play. And then right after college, before I went to graduate school, I had a job. I worked for the city council of the city of Newark, New Jersey, where I'm from. And I had the unique opportunity to work for Councilman Donald Tucker, who became the longest serving councilman in the history of the city of Newark. A very respected man. And that's where I really learned the politics of government and the politics of getting elected. Because although I saw how the importance that I felt the role that government can play in promoting youth and families, you have to get elected in order to be in those positions to make those decisions. And it was then that I really learned how to get, or learned how he got elected, in which I transferred that information to, I guess, a little practice in political consulting over the years. And it's been about 25 years since then. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm sure you have seen a lot in 25 years, especially from New Jersey to Florida.
Yes. I've been in Florida for 20 years now.
Okay.
And so, yes, and so that transitioned me here. And while I was in law school here, I began to work in local elections here.
Okay. So 2020 election, what did you observe as a strategist from each political party, particularly Republican, Democratic Party, as they work to first secure their base and then engage other constituents outside of their base? Like what is your observation as it relates to their strategies?
So and I'll speak to Miami-Dade and then grow from out there, because I think in South Florida, particularly Miami-Dade, I should say, because I know our listeners are Broward and Palm Beach, but here in Miami-Dade, we saw something very interesting. For the first time, we saw a race for the mayor of Miami-Dade that was very partisan. It was a very partisan, even though it's a nonpartisan election. It was framed as a very partisan election because in the primary of that, you had two people who were jockeying for the symbol of the local Democratic Party, the symbolism of the local Democratic Party. And that's important because there are more Democrats in this county than Republicans. And so for so very long, our races for county mayor, although they are nonpartisan, the mayors have been Republican. And that didn't really make sense to many people. And many people like myself and many other activists in the community have always said that we need a strong Democrat to even run for Miami-Dade County mayor. And that hadn't happened in so many years, like a notable viable candidate that was a Democrat. And so if you notice in Dade County, we have 5 countywide elected officials. 3 of them are partisan elected. That is the state attorney, public defender, and the county clerk. All 3 of them are Democrats. For the reasons what I mentioned, because there are more Democrats in this county, so it makes sense that our countywide officials, if it's a partisan election, are Democrats. And then the 2 nonpartisan positions that are countywide are our property appraiser and our county mayor. And those 2 offices are represented by a Republican. And so, so therein lies the issue. And so that's why in this cycle, it was very good to see Democrats running for mayor as Democrats. And so you had Danielle Levine and you had Alice Pinellas, who were appealing to a Democratic base in our community. And then on the other side, you had a Bovo, Commissioner Bovo, who was positioning himself as the lone conservative or Republican in the race, which served him well as it relates to getting into the runoff, because he was the only registered Republican. And then in the mayoral race, you had, a couple of other candidates who really couldn't surface as much because it became so partisan. And I don't think many of us assumed that it would be as partisan as it became. So you have someone who was a very centrist candidate by the name of Xavier Suarez, who very well respected county commissioner, who just could not break through the partisanship on either side to garner the support of a base of people. And when a low voter turnout is what we have. So I think in Miami-Dade County, this is a beautiful moment that we now have elected the first woman mayor in Miami-Dade County's history, and someone who is aligning herself with the majority of the people politically in our county, their politics. And I think that's very, very important. And I hate to have said that long soliloquy, but I think it really puts everything in perspective as it relates to how the national elections played down, because what you will see is that the exact same vote total that Biden won Dade County percentage-wise is exactly the same as Daniela Levine. And so although we have now the last couple of days talked about the underperformance of Democrats in Dade County as it relates to helping the statewide numbers for Biden to perhaps compete better in Florida. But even in spite of that, that the national campaign has elevated us to have a Democratic elected mayor as our standard bearer, and that's a good thing. And then also, I think it's of significance for us to think about is that on the county commission, we have another awesome opportunity. If depending upon, I believe it's going to be a special election for Daniela Levine's old seat, because we have now three young men, my contemporaries. You have Keone McGee now, new blood on the county commission. You have Oliver Gilbert, new blood on the county commissioner, and you have Keon Hardiman. By the way, all three of these young men went to HBCUs. By the way, Keon went to FAMU. Keone went to Howard. I'm gonna leave that alone. And the other brother that was just on here who went to Howard as well, I'm gonna leave that alone too, because the real HU is now being represented here for your viewing pleasure. And then, of course, Oliver went to FAMU as well. So that is an enormous opportunity. But then we also have, I think Ms. Higgins won her race as well for county commission. And then depending upon what happens with Daniela seat, you'll have a majority Democratic county commission with a Democratic mayor. That is amazing. And that is a unique opportunity. We have never seen anything like this. In a very long time. I can't imagine when something like this has happened under executive mayor since we've had an executive mayor. So there should be and will be, and I'm hoping that there is a major policy shift in Miami-Dade County as it relates to how we approach everything from COVID, from the environment, from gun violence, from criminal justice reform, from how we respect and admire our elderly as it relates to children's services and children's programs. As it relates to the arts community as well. There should be a major policy shift, and the mayor should have the support of a willing and able county commission as well. So I'm very excited about that. As we move up to Broward County, I know there's a tight race for a judicial race there that came about in Broward County. I don't know what the end result is. I believe the candidate who was trying to unseat an incumbent, an African American candidate who was trying to unseat an incumbent, is a hair ahead. The last I read, but I'm not absolutely sure. But there's also something very beautiful that happened in Broward. Hollywood elected its first African American to its city commission, if you can believe that.
In 95 years.
If you can believe that. And that is a beautiful thing as well, especially when we saw in Hollywood over the past, 8 years, this big issue of these Confederate symbols still being persistent in their street names, particularly through historic Black communities. And so Ms. Anderson, the new commissioner-elect, is actually from that historic neighborhood, Liberia, which is the name of the neighborhood. And so that is an extraordinary thing. And in addition to, I think the Broward County Sheriff election, Mr. Tony was elected. He was appointed, and now he was elected countywide Broward Sheriff. And so we're hoping that has creates sensibilities towards the African American community there, where the criminal justice reform is very much needed in Broward County. When you walk into that courthouse, you're going to see a lot of Black folk in the criminal courthouse there. So there's a lot of need, not just for criminal justice reform, but just prevention, preventive services for children, so they never have to see a juvenile courthouse or criminal courthouse. So we're hoping that Mr. Tony can lead and be a part of that conversation. But let me tell you something, Broward County, for those of us who live in Miami-Dade, who are people of African descent, I mean, Broward is looking very attractive these days. Politically, with all of the various Black elected officials that we now have there. So, and so, all of these things as it relates to
don't forget Harold Pryor, the Broward County's first black, actually, I think it's the state of Florida's first Black state attorney, correct?
No, but one of
Broward County. I know it's Broward County's for sure.
Yes, Broward County, I believe for sure. You had the state attorney in Orange County before him, and I don't know if there were any other African Americans before that, but a very short list nonetheless. So Broward County is really seeing a additional renaissance as it relates to Black power, if you will. And so that's a beautiful thing. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, and Broward has been, I think last year was named one of the fastest growing counties in Florida for the Black community and Black businesses as well.
I mean, I was having a conversation with some friends of mine, even after the primary, in which we saw some African-American candidates here in Miami-Dade not have success, and then seeing what was happening in Broward County and then after what transpired just recently here in Miami-Dade, I had about 30 college students that I was that had working for me, working on campaigns as poll workers in the North Miami Beach area. And I went by a precinct in North Miami Beach in the Highland Village area. And I sort of veered, I'm looking at my maps, I'm not like very familiar with the area, but as I was leaving the precinct, checking up on my people, I didn't go the right way. And I found myself in, a little neighborhood. And as I was coming to the end of the street, I see this huge flag in someone's front yard and on a flagpole. And I saw two campaign signs in front of it of local candidates. One was the sitting North Miami Beach mayor, and the other was a candidate running for city council against one of the one of my clients. And but on this flagpole was a huge Confederate flag, and I was like, wow, this is really amazing. That I'm driving through North Miami Beach, and there's someone supporting candidates for city council and mayor, with a huge Confederate flag, and I don't know what that means to some people, and I'm not going to comment what it means to me, but again, many people in Miami-Dade looking very closely at Broward County for the work, and just very honored and happy as the progress that's being made in Broward County.
Absolutely. All right, Palm Beach. You got any thoughts on Palm Beach County?
Well, looking at the numbers, what I would say with one of the things that I don't really have a lot to say specifically about Palm Beach, but South Florida as a region overall, so often I think people don't understand that our state is a state that can go either way every 2 years, whether it's gubernatorial or presidential, as it relates to whether the majority will vote Democratic or Republican. But I think sometimes we forget in South Florida that we're not just voting for our community. When we go vote, we're voting for Democrats throughout the whole state of Florida. And we not only do we have to win our county, but winning our county doesn't really mean anything for a statewide election. We're trying to win the state. So our numbers are added to a statewide pool. And we have to carry and push up, you sort of like you're playing a basketball game or football game, and you're up, but you have to push up those numbers even more. So you just keep scoring, you know what I mean? And so even though Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach are Democratic counties, we still have to push up our numbers. We need every vote. He's not going to, this person or that person is not going to win our county, but that's not what we're voting for. We're voting to win Florida. And I think sometimes we forget that. And so, relatively speaking, out of the many falsehoods that our president stated in his press conference the other day about he's winning around the country, one thing he said to me was actually accurate. He said that he won Florida by a lot. He did win by a lot. I think he won by about 3 percentage points, 4%, 3 percentage points, I think. 2 or 3 percentage points in Florida is a lot, and we still have a lot of work to do. But fortunately, what's happening around this country, it appears that Joe Biden is going to cross that 270 threshold at some point. So people are handling business around this country. What we've seen in Arizona, I think, was amazing. A state, a lot of times when we watch these post shows, I don't know if people understand that it's not until states starts to flip, that's when the real action happens. So states that were Republican that become Democrat, or states that were Democrat that become Republican, in a presidential race where everything is equally divided for the most part, when you start taking away, that's when the real sparks start to happen. And I think that's what we see. And we're going to see in Michigan, I believe, for sure. We're going to see that in Arizona, and then Pennsylvania, which Trump only won by 0.7% of the vote. Hopefully that will sway as well.
Right. Now, real quick, the Black voters do you think Black voters were as engaged as anticipated, and particularly Black males? That had been a debate over the last few weeks on how engaged, and did Black males even turn out in high numbers? So what are your thoughts around the Black voter engagement in this election cycle, holistically, local and national level, and then the supposed disengagement of the Black male voter? What are your thoughts on those?
So I want to conversation about African American males with this. We're talking about a very small amount of. It's a very small percentage, but it's a very small percentage can mean a lot in a swing state.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about a cataclysmic change in the difference between Black men's tendency to vote and Black women's tendency to, their tendencies around voting. But it is a slight difference, but in swing states, it can matter a lot. I think that what you will find, African American men have a different outlook on things, just like Black folk have different outlook on things. And we, it's just a different outlook. And I think we just have to appreciate that there are certain views that most of the people who, most men, wrong or right, there is a tendency of men to like that machismo attitude. And I think that's what Trump has done, not just with Black folk. He's done that with Hispanic folk. He's done that with white men. If you look at who supports Donald Trump, I mean, it's that, a part of it is that machismo that he represents, and that a lot of different types of men sort of just like. It has nothing to do with policy, unfortunately. It just has to do with attitude and style. And I don't know if it's really more substantive, but I think it's attitude and style. And to be quite honest, sometimes women, when you look at the last time he ran, that the majority of women voted for Donald Trump last election. Why? You have to ask yourself the same question, given his other attitudes versus women. But I think there's a tendency in people to sometimes, a percentage of people, to gravitate towards that machismo. And I think that's what you find in African American men. As it relates to Obama, of course, 96% of Black men and women, I believe, voted for Barack Obama. And then Hillary Clinton, it reduced a lot on the Black male side. And then now we're at like 80%. But I think, I think that decline, I don't think that is something that's going to continue. I think that's something that probably that's about as low as it's going to get. I think it had to do with attitudes towards the particular candidates, not with the Democratic Party. When you look at why people voted for Donald Trump and why people voted for Biden, the majority of people who voted for Biden voted for him were voting against Trump. Mm-hmm. So, which is very unheard of, to have the majority of people who are voting for a particular candidate voting is the anti-Trump vote. They like Biden and they probably do support, but they hate Trump more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, but on the Trump side, about 70% of the voters who voted for Trump voted for him. They weren't voting against the Democrats or voting against Biden. That means that people are really caught up in that cult of personality of Donald Trump. And we always got to remember that, anyone and everybody can vote. It matters not what your educational level is. It doesn't matter why you're voting for somebody. You can vote for them because they got a red tie on or a blue tie on. It does need not be a critical analysis of, an overcritical analysis of it. But I do think that people were voting for Trump because they were more often voting for him because of his policies. They really do support him. I don't. And I can give you 1,000 reasons why, but those who do really are passionate about him. And you don't have that on the opposite side. And so that affects how all of us vote on the opposite side.
Absolutely. Any closing thoughts you have on, because the presidential election has not been decided yet as of this broadcast. So any closing thoughts that you have on that, of who will serve as our president for the next 4 years?
Well, what I would say is I think the president was reckless in his commentary about our democratic process. Votes are to be counted. All those votes that were legally provided, that people spent their time to go vote. People spent their time, went out of their way to vote either absentee or in person. All of those people's votes, no matter what the outcome is required. It's required that their votes be counted. So I would say to people, we've had this 4 years of mayhem out of the White House. It's almost over. You're going to hear worse things from the president. You're going to hear the term fraud used several times. You got people in Donald Trump's camp in one state saying, stop the vote, and in other states saying, count the vote. You know what I'm saying? So this is all, it's all show, and that's what we had in the White House for 4 years. We had a showman. We had a P.T. Barnum, and it's almost over. When all the votes are counted, all the legally required votes are counted, I believe Biden is going to prevail. And so, in 2000, it took 30 some odd days for the election to be finalized for Florida to grant the election by 535 votes. This election is not going to be decided by 535 votes. Well, now let me say that. Maybe it will be decided by 535 votes in Pennsylvania. But we have time. We have different states that have different laws. The president cannot dictate how elections should go. That's un-American. We have a complicated system of government where every state has its own legislature, makes its own laws, sometimes have different ages for everything that you can think of under the sun. And they also have different ways to administer elections. And as long as those legislatures properly promulgated those rules and regulations and they're being enforced effectively, we have no right to determine how Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin or Nevada or Arizona, the president doesn't have that right. And as a Republican, so-called Republican, he should respect the state's rights. And so, I would say cut your TV off a little bit more, relax. I think we're going to get back to our old normal, which was not that good anyway. But but it feels like it was so much better, and because it was a little bit better. Those would be my closing thoughts. And
well, thank you so much, Chris, for your commentary today. Stay with me. I have a couple of announcements for our audience. We have MIA Magazine X Miami Book Fair issue being released on today, actually. And you can check that out at issue.com/MIA Media GRP or MIAmediagrp.com, which is MIA Media Group. You can read our healthcare issue highlighting South Florida's frontline medical workers, healthcare, mental, physical, and emotional healthcare professionals, as well at issue.com/MIA Media Group or on the website. The Art of Black Miami issue of MIA Magazine, which is a beautiful artistic representation and guide of galleries that represent Black artists in Miami for visitors and locals. This issue will be published on November 27th. So please look out for that as we get into the art season here in South Florida. And MIA Magazine and the Greater Miami Conventions and Visitors Bureau invite you to enter the Art of Black Miami cover competition. If you want to learn more, you can register at MIA Media Group, and that's MIAmediagrp.com and artofblackmiami.com. The competition opens is open now, and the deadline to enter for the cover is November 16th. The results will be announced on November 18th. So for all my artists, my visual artists out there, make sure you check that out and enter for your chance to be featured on the cover. And remember to watch our weekly entertainment show, Soul. The show discusses art and culture, food, fashion, relationships, mental health, and more. Tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. with our host, Nikki Jellin. Next week, we're going to be continuing the Leaders Are Readers campaign with special guest Yanela McLeod, Miami Times, and the Fight for Equal. She's a writer at the Miami Times and an author of The Fight for Equality, Race, Sport, and the Black Press from 1948 to 1958. So make sure you tune in next week. Thank you so much again, Chris, for joining us. Thank you, John, who joined us earlier. Please make sure you check him out at Miami Book Fair, and be sure to share this video with your network of people, because there's lots of great information that was shared here today. And mark your calendar for every Thursday at noon, and we'll see you next Thursday at noon.